Thank you so much, Ana, for being here. Bienvenida a este espacio. Te agradezco mucho por haber aceptado nuestra invitación. I am honored to be the host or the co-host of this session. The next system, just a little bit of context of what the next system is, because I know we have a different type of audience for this session and probably for every session. Well, the Next System Convergence is an event conceived as an opportunity to gather hundreds of people online as we move forward together towards the November teachings. It's also sort of like a preparation space for that event in November. But more than that, I would like to say personally, it's also a chance or a space to connect, reconnect, networking, reimagining our research topics and our work as academics and activists in different corners of the world. We do this through the lenses of the Next System project, but also through the lenses of the people that are doing community work and solidarity work in different parts of the world, and building their own next systems. I like to call it in plural instead of one next system, right? In the honoring, that Zapatista saying, right? Like muchos mundos posibles, no? A world of many worlds. So yeah, I think this is an opportunity to bring together people from all sorts of backgrounds and addressing pressing challenges and crises. I am personally proud of this time being gathering with and connecting with people in South America. For the first time, I know this is like something new that we're doing, in the Next Systems, connecting people in South America and Latin America and other parts of the global South. So thank you, Ana Inés. So a little bit of who Ana Inés is. She is an educator, activist, researcher. She has raised 5 children and she is the grandmother of 4. Her themes and interests are related to collective and horizontal power and to expanding access to basic rights for all. She works as full-time professor at the Universidad Nacional de San Martín and also as a principal researcher in the National Council of Science in Argentina. She is the president of the Instituto para la Inclusión Social and also sits at the board of the Community Economics Institute. Amongst other international tasks, she is responsible for. She loves to dance, play sports, to collective embroidering, and march on the streets in all occasions she sees necessary. I would also like to add, if you allow me to, Ana Inés, that you are also an active collaborator for the Global Tapestry of Alternatives. And okay, you have the floor. Take it away. Thank you for being here.
Muchas gracias. Thank you, Daisy. Thank you, Kelly. And thank you for everybody who's put an effort to make this happen. Thank you for people who are listening now or maybe listening to me later when the release of the videos and audios goes on. So I'm planning to present the issue that I was hoping to put forward through talking for more or less 15 minutes and then go into showing you some photos of what the issues I was bringing forward look like, because I think it's important that we imagine first and then we look into what it looks like later. So my talk will be on the issue of direct democracy at the university classroom. And for that, I need to provide you with some context of where I do my work, because otherwise it may be difficult to understand. I'm Argentina by birth. I also had the opportunity to live abroad for 7 years in California. Due to a scholarship, Fulbright scholarship. And with this, what I want to bring forward too is that I have experienced teaching in different national settings. I've also taught in other places abroad. And every place is different. And one big difference of the university context in Argentina for national universities is that universities are free of charge. There's no tuition. These are public free universities, as we call them. And Argentinians are very proud of this. And so that's one point I wanted to bring forward first. The second issue I want to bring forward is that my university is what it's called a new or newer national university, because national universities in Argentina have a very, very long tradition that go back almost 200 years ago. But this university is 35 years old. And these newer universities set out with the goal and the ambition to host people from different places and contexts that for very different reasons were not accessing university studies. So that's a very important point I wanted to make. My university hosts more or less 50,000 students, but these are students that either do their coursework face-to-face or virtually. So students who take courses face-to-face, the courses I mainly teach, are more or less in total on campus 27,000. These students are the disciplines are organized in schools. There's 12 schools at my university, amongst which the School of Humanities, where I do my work, is one of them. And within the School of Humanities, there's different disciplines. So there's different career tracks and coursework that is organized through disciplines. However, many of the courses can be taken by people from different disciplines. And so when I teach, I try to liberate, as I call it, my course, meaning I have the right to ask for the School of Humanities to open the course for everybody at the school. And so that happens as well. Yet, oftentimes the student body that I work with is mostly focusing on education. So I want to speak a little bit about the kind of students that go into my classroom or my courses. The student body is very diverse. People come from very different class backgrounds. Also, their interests are different, even though they may all be interested in education as a career. Their interests are different because some of them are very interested in going into formal education, but some people are interested in going into community kinds of settings for education, or here what's called educación popular. So that's one issue of diversity. Class is another diverse issue, even though the majority, more than 80% of the student body I work with are from working class families, and they also work. So another issue that we've been documenting that is different across students is their languages of origin. Mostly they use Spanish because Spanish is the national language of Argentina, but many of them have backgrounds that have hosted, and I'm using the have hosted native languages in their families. And this is something that happens in Argentina as well as around the world, which is language loss. But we try to identify whether or not this is happening with them, because that's something we put into work in our coursework. Sexual and gender orientation are also diverse, and also is diverse the migration patterns, meaning there's many students who take the courses I teach that come from families that have migrated either from different cities or rural places in Argentina to Buenos Aires, or from neighbor countries. So as you can say, we work with a lot of richness, which is one of the issues we put forward from the very beginning in our classes, and I will get into that a bit later. I teach 2 courses at the undergrad level annually, meaning one in the first semester and a second one in the second semester, because my workload is mostly in research, because I'm a National Council Fellow, but I'm also a professor at the university. And I also teach at the graduate level. There's in the School of Humanities, there's this program that is a transdisciplinary program. And so that's by way of context. Now, let me get into how is it that I'm defining direct democracy in the university classroom? What does it mean? By direct democracy, I'm conceptualizing the fact that we can all be a part of the coursework with equal rights. And having said that, I need to explain, and I will be explaining how we put that forward through different practices. By direct democracy, we also mean the fact that we find time and a concrete space for the group that each cohort composes to have a time to elaborate on what we are learning and take and make decisions. Now, I need to explain to you that my classes are 4 hours long. That's the way it's set up at my university. And I teach at what's called the el turno noche, the night shift. It would be the translation more or less, meaning that students come to my classes at 6 o'clock, 6 p.m., and we stay until 10 p.m. at night. When I say this, usually people find it very strange that such a thing exists. And this is because the student body at my school and at my department, the education department, are workers. They work, usually they work at schools because they have earned a credential earlier, or they do different kinds of jobs. So they go to learn at the university late in the afternoon at night, which is also very important that you keep in mind, because this means that people get on a Friday night, because I teach on Fridays, tired, but also they get there very excited and very motivated to learn. That's a good combination, meaning that even though they may be tired, when they get into our classroom and when we see the photos, you will understand what I mean. We provide them with a setting that is very different than what they're used to within my university or other coursework they've done in the past. So keeping in mind that I have just defined direct democracy as this capacity to converse and elaborate and make decisions about the way we do the learning, I need to also say that because I am a professor at the university, which is an institution with a set curriculum, I do have guidelines that I have to obey or go by, which of course I do. So that is the first issue that comes in, which is how do we make it so that as a teaching body, as professors, we plan and we put forward a curriculum and a plan in the syllabus, and then we open it up for discussion. This usually blows people's minds too, meaning the students who come into the class, because they quite don't understand what could mean that we have a right to go over the way we've planned things and maybe reshuffle them. I want to explain a little bit about the 2 courses I teach, the content. The first semester, I teach a class that in the school curriculum is called, the translation would be more or less epistemology of the social sciences and the humanities. I have renamed it and I call it epistemologies in the plural. of the social sciences and the humanities and other ways of learning. So again, here by the title, people may be a bit disconcerted when they walk into a class, because I put forward from the very beginning that when we are talking about epistemology, that is the theories that ground the generation of knowledge and the different perspectives, we're talking in the plural. Argentina is a country that at the university level has been very much informed by a European tradition and also an Anglo-Saxon tradition. And that means that still the content and the way it's taught at our university is pretty much oriented by that setting. So in our team, when we put forward this different name for the class we teach, what we're doing is from the very beginning, opening it up for us to think that there's other perspectives at hand. The other course I teach in the second semester, which is the one I'm teaching now, is called more or less group dynamics and pedagogies, critical pedagogies and collaborative pedagogies. And so in this semester, what we do is explore different theories on group dynamics and also the way certain teachers and pedagogues have translated them into practices, concretely in classroom settings. And in doing that, we also practice those practices. So we emulate what we're learning in the theory in the classroom. So going back to my classroom setting, like I said, I teach for 4 hours, which means that it gives me room and time to work with a lecture, an activity that students may plan and conduct, so on and so forth. The other issue that I want to bring to your attention is that because of this time span that I have each week, I can build in what I call la asamblea pedagógica, the pedagogical assembly, which means a concrete time in which the whole classroom setting gathers and discusses topics that are of our interest and take and make decisions about those topics. For example, the planning of the classrooms ahead, or whether or not some students have trouble commuting and maybe coming in late, and how can we support them into being included in the classroom when they get in. Remember, these are people who work all day and have to commute to come to the university and so on and so forth. Other issues that have been discussed are the grading criteria. The grading criteria are on the syllabus. There are some that I cannot change because are mandatory by the university, but there are some that we can rework. And sometimes we have done that because this is elaborated with the group. And of course, we do so if there are reasons that make us all think that a couple of criteria could be changed or added. Usually what happens is that the criteria, the original criteria, are not changed, yet more criteria are added, which is an interesting issue in itself. I find it very interesting, and I can talk about this for a long time as well. So having said all this, the overall strategy when I think about direct democracy in the classroom is to maximize or expand the capacity to work collectively and understand learning as a collective endeavor. This, as a discourse, may sound very interesting and may sound as common sense, yet it's not common sense. Usually, at all levels of education in the classroom, there's the person in charge who delivers and individual students who achieve and get credits. The whole language of political economy built into the classroom is fascinating to me. I've written a piece, a very short piece on La economía política en la clase universitaria. And so there's a whole underground meaning, or not explicit meaning, that plays out at the university level at least, that even though people say that they're learning as a group, their mentality is not set to learn as a group. To make a group learning happen, you need to put forward certain strategies, or what I call tactics and practices, that need to be put forward and organized and presented. So I'm going to list them now. I'm going to list a set of practices we use, and then I will ask either Daisy or Kelly to help me with showing the slides, and I will walk you through the slides to put an image into what I'll be listing now. So some of the practices we use are related to what we call el inventario, and making visible through an inventory what are the resources that people bring into the class. So their first assignment is to write a piece. We provide them with prompts about what's the meaning for them of resources, what are the resources each of them brings, what would happen if those were thought as collective, and whether or not those can be organized in an inventory. So that's one of the assignments we give them, actually, after the first class. After the first class, we ask them to do something like that. That puts them immediately into reorganizing their mindset about what counts as teaching and learning at this classroom, whether or not they can tap onto their resources, which of course the answer is yes, but more importantly, how. So, because one could say, yes, we all learn from our backgrounds and we all bring different experiences, but then the question is, how do we do this? And so we put everybody to think about this. And also our team, the professors, we also complete that same prompt and we put it publicly. In this seminar that I'm teaching now, this coursework that I'm doing this semester, I have proposed in the syllabus, and everybody accepted, that we put the assignments into a shared drive and everybody can see what everybody brings in, which is again a practice that has a lot to offer, yet it also has some issues to take care of that I can speak about later if people are interested. So this is one of the tactics or practices that we use, the question about the resources and the inventory, which, like I said, brings forward the question about property. Whose property are these resources? Can they be exchanged? Is this collective property? And so how? That also brings forward another issue, which is that time, space, knowledge are considered, are thought of as resources. Usually people in their assignments, when they respond, the prompt, they bring forward the idea that yes, time is a resource, and yes, space is a resource, and our histories are resources. So that puts us into another of the practices we use, which is, like I said, the pedagogical assembly, whereby we decide what the classroom setting will look like. And when I'll show you the pictures, you will see exactly what I mean by this. But mainly to start with, it means that we always teach in a circle. I have taught classes as smaller as 20 students and as large as 80 students. And we managed to do that. And it's very interesting what that brings forward, because when everybody's seeing everybody and the circle is gathered, there's a different dynamic altogether going on from the beginning. The other practice that we use is what we call small group work and work in pairs. And we do that, as I said, because since our classes are long in time, we have the time to gather in the classroom and do a small group work. But we do this with a certain theoretical background that I will go into. So now I will make sure that I bring forward certain aspects of the theoretical background we're using. And then in a little bit, I will ask my collaborators to show the pictures. So some of the points I want to make as conceptual framework is that we take an approach that is based on la psicología social argentina, social psychology in Argentina. There are three names that I want to highlight. Those are Ana Quiroga, José Blecher, y Enrique Pichon Riviere. People can ask me about those names later if they so wish. But the main point these people have worked on, they have worked in the 20th century in a moment of time in Argentina that many things were happening in the sense of expanding people's rights. One of them was access to education. And they thought very specifically about how to do teaching and learning at the university level. So mostly these three authors have conceptualized what does learning look like when you teach at the university with the theoretical approach of grupo operativo de aprendizaje. Grupo operativo de aprendizaje, roughly translated as operational group learning, means that at the same time you're working on content, you're working on the relationship that that specific group is having to learn about that specific content. So these people have documented extensively that humans, when we gather and learn as a group, we are at the same time building knowledge and interacting amongst ourselves. And thus, if you document that, which is what they have proposed, if at the same time that's happening, you document that with someone who's observing and can bring back what goes on later, you can make that visible. So we use this as an overall strategy. That is, we work with Grupo Operativo de Aprendizaje. And at the very beginning, we usually, the professors are the ones who are being either coordinators or observers of these groups. But during the quarter, we hand out to the students the possibility of becoming observers and coordinators, so they have a chance to practice, and what's very important, to bring back to the group what has transpired, what happened. And that also means identifying and exploring the challenges that groups go through when they work together. For example, when someone observes the pedagogical assembly, they may write down in their notes, this has happened, that there was a conflict or different perspectives over an issue and how that was resolved through the assembly. And sometimes an issue is not resolved within one assembly. It takes like 3 or 4 assemblies to be resolved. So that observation comes back to the group to be thought about. So that's one specific point I wanted to make in regards to Psicología Social Argentina. The other perspective we take very seriously is that brought forward by Franz Fanon, Caribbean Martinican-born scholar who also studied in France and later in his life went to Africa to concretely be a part of the liberation movement in Africa. His life history is very interesting, but now I'm going to highlight just a couple of things that we take from his theory, which is that any work you do as an educator or a physician, he was a doctor, needs to take into account the socio-historical context in which that happens. And very important, you need to look at patriarchal structures and racist structures at play. So we bring forward this type of knowledge for the students to think about, not only theoretically, but also whether or not that plays out in our groups when we teach them. The other part of the theory we bring forward and use is that based on critical and liberatory theories and pedagogies, and we use a diverse range of authors, of course, Paulo Freire, but also people who are working now with pedagogies that really push our systems, like Fikiles Sumalo, who's an African descent thinker and scholar, who's now working at the University of Toronto. I can provide her information later if you're interested. And finally, we work also with the notions brought forward by what's called schizoanalysis in Argentina, that is grounded also in institutional analysis, that is related to the work of French thinkers Deleuze and Guattari, yet it has had a very long tradition in Brazil y Argentina. Thinkers such as Vida Kamkagi, Osvaldo Saidon, Eliana Conde Rodriguez, Barenblick. So those are names and people who have put forward this theory, by which one of the main points they've made is that as humans, we create institutions and those tend to structure our work. But as humans, we're also able to change them. And there's always happening this, what they have called la fuerza instituyente. So the ongoing process of transformation is always at play. So having highlighted those points, I would like to ask Daisy or Kelly whether we can start showing the slides.
Yes.
And I will walk you through the practices. I'm going to put in the chat a link to one of the sites that can give you more information about the work of our team, if that is of interest to you. So direct democracy in the university classroom, sharing strategies. If you can walk me through the next slide.
Give me a second, please, Anna. For some reason, this is not working. I don't know why. Okay.
Muy bien. So, like I said to you, we work with a Grupo Operativo de Aprendizaje framework. And these are two pictures where you can see myself. To the right, there's a picture where I was lecturing on some content, providing information to the students, writing on the board. You can also see the slide there that I was showing and talking through. And in the picture to the left, I'm standing and also speaking with the students about content that I was particularly interested in highlighting. So yeah, go ahead. So that's more or less one of the classes. So this is a picture of the way in one of the groups we thought about what I was telling you about the resources. In this particular group, the students used a tree to represent the different resources. And over time, we drew the tree on a piece of paper like you are seeing in the slide. And then over time, the resources were added throughout the quarter. If you go to the next slide, there's a more detailed version of this. So you can see there that they were saying there's resources such as the films we watch, there's the bibliography we use, but there's also material things as the computers, Also money, we need money to purchase, for example, Xerox material, so on and so forth. So this is to show you that this brainstorming process about resources is active and goes on. In this particular group, it took this shape. If we go to the next slide, we'll see a different shape for this kind of exercise. This is the group with whom I'm working now, and it's important that I tell you that every time I start to work with a group, I ask them for their written informed consent on documenting what we do together. In that consent, I ask them whether I can use the material we generate to present the work we do together, for example, today. But in that consent, I tell them they can use the material we generate too, the work we do together too. So it's a multilateral informed consent, so to speak. But what we're seeing in the picture is the way one, because in this seminar, we've formed in the first 2 classes smaller groups, and this small group chose to represent the issue on resources using threads that with different colors of threads, and they spoke out the different resources they brought in and whether or not they were shared by them at this small group. You can see me sitting on the floor. I'm the one wearing black, because when they started to do this presentation, I asked them whether I could join. They let me join, so I worked with them. That's another way to think about resources and put them forward. If we go to the next slide, we'll see yet a different form. This is the resources someone else taught in this same group, and a way to organize the inventory. So they thought it was important to highlight tangible things and symbolic things. So this is their way of classifying. Next slide, please. This is a different group, not the group I'm teaching with now. This is a group from 3 years ago. And this is to show you how this group thought about time as a resource and how to keep track of it. And so what they proposed is that in every class, we would write on the board our planning for everybody to see, and that they would use sticky notes to put notes on what we were accomplishing over time during the class. And so this time we did accomplish all the tasks, but sometimes we don't. But that's an interesting way also to look at what goes on when people think about the common resources and how to use them. Next slide, please. This is another issue that for this particular group of students was very important, which was food. Like I said, I teach from 6 to 10 at night, and so dinner time comes in between. And this particular group thought that they wanted to collectively share the caring for the food. And these are images that show that. Next picture. This is something that I have here with me, and later I can show it in detail if people are interested in this particular thing, which is the traveling notebook that is called, the picture says here, this is not a traveling notebook, but it was a play on ideas, meaning this is an actual physical object that is a notebook that will travel amongst members of the class, but it's not simply a notebook. It is a pool of resources. And so in this particular group, what people decided was to get the notebook, each of them during the coursework, and fill it in with their ideas and desires and proposals. So that's another way of sharing the resources and backgrounds. Next, please. This is what we call the Feria Epistemológica, or Feria de Epistemologías, which is an open fair we usually propose to students in the first semester course to undertake, meaning to expose to whomever is walking down the hallway at the university or is invited very specifically to come and see what they've learned over time in our coursework. So knowledge as a resource and sharing with others outside the classroom also is a very important issue to students we work with. Next, please. This is another version of the same course. This is another cohort. This is of this year, first semester. This is the way students decided to do their care this year. Next, please. This is what a pedagogical assembly looks like. So there's 2 or 3 slides that I will show you from different groups. This is one. The next one is this one. Next one. And before we go into the next one and last one, I want to explain that when we do the epistemological fair, la Feria Epistemológica, since students invite people from their families or their communities to come and see what they've done over the quarter, we do the work of the fair and we end with a large assembly, which is the next picture. Next, please. Yeah, so this is what the pedagogical assembly looked like this year at the end of the quarter when we put together the Feria de Epistemología. And since you don't know who these people are, I want to explain to you that many of these people are brothers, sisters, partners, mothers, fathers, aunts, co-workers of the students. You cannot see everybody because this was a very large assembly and the picture didn't capture it all. People are sitting on sort of layers around the circle because it was a very large circle. And what was very interesting about this particular assembly was that since we opened up the topics to discuss, and so a couple of people who are not members of the class wanted to discuss the role of public free universities in Argentina in the context we're undergoing now, which is the attack to the public system. And so that was the issue at hand in this assembly. So thank you. The slides are over and I'm not sure whether, whether you want to open question and answers because there's still 15 more minutes. Meanwhile, I can show you directly the notebook, el cuaderno viajero.
That is such a beautiful work. Thank you so much. I don't see any questions on the chat for now, but I have one, if I may. Okay, while we wait for people to engage with the conversation, posing their questions, I wanted to ask you something about this idea of knowledge as resource, right? I was very drawn into what you shared of how knowledge, time, and space are seen as resources in your class, in this university. I was wondering maybe how does this space that engage with knowledge in such a way as resource can be essential to build the new system, to build what is next, to build what is after capitalism and after all these crises that we are all facing in the world. I know, is this something that you have thought about, that you have reflected on? Can you please share your ideas with us? Ana Inés, thank you.
Sure. Something that comes to mind immediately to me is that the way I propose to teach and learn at the university classroom is not common, meaning this is a very different setup than what students are used to, either in their own classrooms when they teach and at the university. So I don't want to provide the notion that this is happening in all classrooms at the university, or at least at my university. Is more an exception, even though public universities are very open and dialogic spaces. But this kind of pedagogy is pretty different than what students are used to. And that responds in part to your question, because when when students encounter this kind of pedagogy and they enact it, they work with it with us, they acquire collectively a different resource than they're used to. And the ones who are teaching, who are teachers in their own classrooms, usually report by the third class. Our quarters, our semesters are not that long. Like, for example, this semester, I think I have 17 weeks. But they usually report by the third class that they have already implemented part of the methodology we use in our class in their classrooms, whether it be that schools or community settings. So in that, what I see is that the future is happening now, meaning that we don't have to wait. It can happen now. Next system, in my view, may be happening now if we are opening our eyes and also providing ways for that to happen. Now, I also oftentimes tell the students that it's very difficult to implement such a setting in institutions that have long traditions of doing otherwise. Meaning, if they're teaching at a school where there's a very, say, established school culture, I do not advise them to start shaping everything very directly and very abruptly, because that is not going to work. And so we reflect on that too. And that's why we also show them that we do that also progressively in our own course. We show them we didn't break everything, the rules or everything during the first class. And actually we go by very many norms that we have to go by at the university setting, while we have room to working differently. So that's one way I can answer your question.
Okay. Kelly, do we have more time for one more question that I want to ask?
Yeah, we probably have time for one more question.
Okay, because I don't see any other questions on the chat, right? There's no questions.
Oh, you're all good to go.
Okay. Yeah, I agree with you, Anna. I'm always bringing this contribution to because I work as an organizer for the Next System Teachings project. I'm always bringing this reflection that the next system are not exclusively in the future, but they are in the present. But yeah, we need to take a closer look. So I'm glad to know that there are other scholars from South America that are thinking the same way. So thank you for that reflection. The second question that I want to ask you is about the challenges that you have faced, because I imagine that this is not an easy conversation, and this is because people are used to kind of programmed to follow rules and to be in scholarly settings in certain way, not bringing contributions so much, or adapting to the rules that they are told to adapt to. So what are the challenges that you have been facing in all this process?
Yeah. There's very many of them. One of them is the challenge I face as a professor, because our work conditions in Argentina, specifically now, are very bad, not only in our salaries, but other things that are happening in our country and university. And so to work with this pedagogy, you need to be very certain in your heart, like I am, that you need to devote time that you cannot plan ahead for. So that's one challenge. I never know how much time is going to take me to teach every course I teach. And I say that very frankly and very openly. And this is an issue I have discussed very many times at the union meetings. I participate in the union, and very many times I am faced with a counter argument to my pedagogical approach, which is, if you teach like this, you're working very many more hours than you're paid, and thus it's not a good example for anybody. I understand that. I struggle with that. It is a contradiction that I face. Yet at the same time, I am convinced that even though I don't know how much time is going to take me, it is time worth putting into. Because that brings me to the other issue that I was putting forward, which is another challenge, that is, everybody who meets in the courses I teach have a different setup for their day and their week. Everybody is different. People work long hours, so on and so forth. And so when we gather together, we are acknowledging that not everybody comes into the classroom every week with the same amount of time to prepare. Even though as university students, they know that when they take a course, they need to do work outside of the classroom. Sometimes that's not very easy. And that's a challenge I face, which is I encounter every week the group with a different kind of scenario. What I do with that is I usually ask at the very beginning of the class, we do a game, an activity. It's called Actividad Sensoperceptiva. It's translated by sensoperceptive activity. I'm not sure whether that's English, but it means to put your body into work, to play with others. Very short exercise. It may take 5 minutes. And for example, last week, what we did was just project our voice out, like, ah, so everybody was projecting a sound. And that was a sort of a warm-up to get into the space. And then I usually ask how people are prepared or not. And with that information, I walk through the plan we bring together that is posted in their digital campus a week ahead. A week ahead, they know what's going to happen, more or less, the plan. And so, again, that's a challenge, the diverse ways in which people get to the class and the information they have prior to entering the class. And that is put into discussion. For example, in this group I'm teaching with, last assembly, that was one of the topics. And so there were very many ways of working around this issue that we're implementing actually this Friday. Tomorrow, we're going to see how that works out. Another challenge I face is people who are very convinced that the professor role has to be obeyed, as the tradition says, which is a talking head. Excuse my language, because it's an irony. I don't agree with that, of course. And that's a challenge I face, because sometimes some of the students who walk into the class face their own contradiction about understanding what this pedagogy brings to them, yet feeling that I shouldn't be doing what I'm doing. And because we have the open assemblies, oftentimes this is voiced and it's worked upon. So that's another challenge. Another challenge I face is, like I said, when I discussed this at the union, but also at meetings with faculty. This is a way of teaching that makes visible a lot of things. And so that's a challenge I face with my colleagues. I have to say that I have a very good dialogue going on with my colleagues, even with people that I don't agree with at all. They don't agree with me at all. And that's important to me. It's important to keep the dialogue open. And yes, this is a sort of I will call it, it's a struggle over how we define learning, what learning is all about. So maybe I can stop there, because I'm a talker. I can talk forever. So.
Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you so much for your wonderful presentation and sharing your exciting work. And Daisy, thank you for such thoughtful facilitation and engagement. And that is all the time that we do have for this session today. And I look forward to hopefully seeing all of you at the various sessions throughout the day. So I will go ahead and end this meeting and see you all in the virtual space in other ways.
Muchas gracias,
Gracias.
Ana Inés.
Muchas gracias. De nada. Gracias.